Welcome to Season 3 of Bed and Butter, the podcast where passion meets profession in the world of hospitality. In partnership with Southern Maine Community College, we're back with fresh energy and even bigger conversations. This season, we're talking with culinary innovators, a brewery entrepreneur, hotel and industry leaders, a TED Talk speaker and influencer with a purpose-driven message, as well as one of the top tourism execs in the country, all sharing insights that will inspire and elevate your journey. So whether you're just starting out or aiming for the top, Bed and Butter is your go-to guide. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the show. Today we're joined by Chet Patel, Senior Vice President of Baywood Hotels, which owns and operates over 125 hotels across 25 states. A visionary leader in hospitality, Chet has helped drive Baywood's impressive national footprint. In this episode, he shares his insights on how people of Indian descent have become dominant players in the U.S. hotel industry, and why the name Patel has become nearly synonymous with hospitality entrepreneurship. It's a story of heritage, hustle, and hotel empire building you won't want to miss. Well, welcome, my friend, Chet Patel. Thank you for joining us here on Bed and Butter. It's exciting to have you.
Hey, Sean. Thank you for having me. I know it's been some time that we've not seen each other, but great meeting you. I know we met years ago sitting on these brand boards. It was exciting to get a chance to meet you through these years and become a friend.
A lot of the students will be happy to hear your history, what you've done, how you've become, the kind of hotelier that you are. And it's a little different twist than some of our hoteliers. You have a lot of things you add assets to a company, not just necessarily checking people in and checking them out, but you've got a lot of other things that are really some assets I'd love to chat about.
Sure. Yeah, Baywood Hotels, we started back in 2000. Actually, we're celebrating our 25th year. I'm Senior Vice President here at Baywood, one of the founders. We basically develop asset-owned, ground-up development, repurpose. We also take hotels, do dual brands. Sometimes we go ahead and reposition them. But, a little bit of everything for over the last 25 years. We started out with Choice, IHG, Hilton, and Marriott. That's kind of our core of 135 hotels now. We've got a few in the ground, opened about 4 hotels this year. So we're still pretty active.
I know what it's like to open one hotel, but boy, doing 4 at a time. It's like, you remember which call was I on or what did I say? Especially if you get 2 in the same brand category.
Absolutely. But, one thing, Sean, we've had an awesome team. I've got quite a few partners that are very like I am across the country. So we kind of break up our roles and break up our projects. So it helps a lot in that sense. I do sit on brand boards to, bring that knowledge and expertise, from the brands and to the brands. Honestly, it helps when you own and operate and build these hotels to let brands know what's going on. We've had some challenges in the past with companies and just trying to figure out, what's really relevant today with guests and, what makes sense. Value add is a big term that we talk about in our industry. And how do we make that happen when it comes down to really standards and prototypes and understanding what companies are looking for, especially with Marriott, Hilton, and IHG that we do a lot with. So,
it's interesting. I know I've sat in meetings and I listen to you and someone will say something about a toilet. You say, and we changed the type of toilet we had because of what you said in the meeting. It's been the best thing we ever did. We use it for architect. But you could say the difference in this cost is $122 for this one. It's $127 for that one. And people are like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
You've got it because you're doing. How many hotels do you have now?
We got about 135 now.
Yeah, it's funny you say about it. I know we're not at the level there yet, but it's easy to kind of forget what you have and what you don't when you're talking the numbers. And 125, and you could have 125 today, and there's like another one that opens up in the next week or two. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
No, I think what it turns out to be, again, we've got a great team. Give a lot of credit to our team. Without our team, we'd never be who we are today. So again, we operate hotels, we develop hotels, more or less all services above property level services is something we handle in-house. So if it's accounting, revenue management, HR, sales, development, we're pretty much all inclusive, and everything we do is, just owner operator, got friends, family as investors. We really don't third party any hotels as far as management goes. We've got 1 or 2, but they're just very close friends of ours. And there were situations where, we had to kind of take over to help them out. So, but that's kind of what we've been at it. I can't
Whereabouts did you start? And then where are you in the country now?
We started here in the Mid-Atlantic. So if you think about Maryland, DC, Virginia, kind of our core hotels, and we have a small office that's quite large now in San Antonio, Texas. So two particular markets that we're in, started developing, buying some assets. Typically what we do is a cluster type of development management structure just because it makes it easier. So if we go into a market, we typically look at a market of expanding it more than one. So we have that thought process in place before we even look at an asset in a market. We know when you've got one off, it's a lot harder to manage, lot harder to get to, and making sure that we can really service the hotel at a level it should be. So with our structure, with management and clustering, it really helps provide that service and overall needed help that we need. So
Yeah, I think, well, when you look at people coming out and looking for jobs, a management company like yours or a hotel company like yours, there's lots of different areas. And I think that's what's unique is that your skill set might be different than somebody else's in the industry versus your cousin or your or some other family member. But you've got a real strength in this whole development growth. And actually, we were talking earlier about, I mean, another whole part of a job is the renovating of hotels. When you have 125 hotels and you got to renovate every 7 years times up to 21 years, that's a lot of renovations.
yeah, yeah. At some point, I mean, when most of our new hotels, so have been new builds, so last 7 years, if you want to say, we built a lot of hotels, so really weren't due on renovations yet. But now it's coming up on 7 years. So we're in the process of renovating quite a few. I'd say close to maybe 10 or 15 a year at this point. So again, kind of had to create a structure and a team that can kind of handle that workload, contractors, go around the country now. We're outside of San Antonio in the Mid-Atlantic. We've expanded out into Colorado, even California. We're up in the New England markets, down in Florida. Florida is a big part of the growth of after COVID. There's a lot of growth down in Florida, so we've really expanded out into that market. Even if you want to call it the Southeast, I guess, Tennessee and Carolinas. So slowly we've kind of spread across the country.
So let's talk about the young Chet Patel. When did you are you from the United States? Are you from somewhere else? Or and how long have you been here? And how did you grow up in the industry?
Great question, Sean. I grew up in South Jersey, out of all places. My parents came as immigrant parents from India. My dad came on a student visa, went to Villanova for his master's degree in civil engineering. So obviously, because being in Villanova, it's kind of settled in the Philadelphia submarket. I worked a few years, and then someone along the way told him, maybe he always wanted to be an entrepreneur, even though he was a mechanical engineer. I think it's instilled in most Indians, especially when you come from a farming background, they want to be your own boss. So someone got him onto the idea of hotels. They can live in a hotel and still rent rooms. You're making money as you live at the hotel. There's not an additional expense for a mortgage payment for a home because where you live is a place that generates revenue. So that got him onto that idea. So when he was looking for, mom and pop motels back then, that's all he could afford in the South Jersey, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area. He was kind of settled on the small one. And one of the reasons he decided to do it was because it had a great living quarter. He had 3 bedrooms, thought about his family, a kitchen, living room right behind the front desk. So that kind of attracted him to this place. And to this day, 55 years later, he still owns a hotel.
Ah,
And I grew up there pretty much my entire life. I moved there when I was 11 months and left when I was about 25. So learned every aspect of the business. There's no choice. You have to learn everything when you have a 29 room mom and pop roadside inn. So
that's great. Now, so you've done all the things. You've done all the jobs, and it probably helped you understand when you get into the business side of things a lot more about the business side of things because you did it.
absolutely. It really does, Sean. And I think what happened, we're put in a position where you have no choice. The only way you can make it work is if you learn the business or learn every aspect of the business, right? I mean, I think the fortunate thing kids have today and the younger generation is they have YouTube. If you think about how do you fix a toilet, how do you run a room? I mean, there's a video on everything now. Back
I
then, it
just
was
got
more
wet a
like,
lot when I was doing it. I got soaking wet.
yeah,
You don't solder the pipe right. You don't hold the faucet right.
that's exactly it. Trial and error, right, Sean? There was no
Yeah.
other choice. You try it, and your mom and dad say, "Why not? Let's try it." And I think that's how you learn, right? If without just trying, you're never gonna have the ability to learn. So learned a lot. I had always a knack and interest in like construction and building maintenance. that side of the business, had to do everything again, maintaining the building and operating it, and operating the hotel. So I had a knack in construction. So growing up, I always had an interest in that side of the field. So today, majority of my role is, taking a look at prototypes, looking at construction costs, renovations, expenses, what's relevant today. Guest needs have changed over the years. Guest traveler 30 years ago is not the same traveler today in age, and the needs are different. So, when it comes down to our role, you and I sit on these brand boards is, we push to make sure they get it. They understand what's important to guests, and we thoughtfully think about how every dollar is spent when we're operating a hotel or building a hotel.
I went
So,
on to AI. I
yeah,
have 3 of those. See, I am relevant. I still use AI. But one of the things I talked about is you've sat on boards where you helped develop prototypes. Not
that's
just
right.
the CAPE committee that you and I serve on together, the asset committee,
Yeah,
but also other committees to talk to them. And so I think that's what's kind of interesting is that they're all looking to you, and you and other hoteliers like yourself and me are trying to give them a guideline saying, look, the customers don't like this anymore. But when you do this,
yeah.
it costs too much. And tell us just a quick thing about the most recent prototype you helped develop.
I think the last one, I've sat on Hilton brand boards, especially on the prototype brand boards. Homewood Suites is a good example. Great brand, started about by Promise back in, the mid 80s, extended stay brand, designed more around like a home away from home, right? Had the right amount of space a guest would need in the rooms, a lot of room in the public spaces, kind of lounge out, whatever you need to do. If you're in situations as a guest where, maybe you had a fire at your house and needed to stay somewhere, this was a fantastic place to stay because it had all the amenities that a guest would expect. Of course, it's not as the same as your house, but at least something that was close by, right? And something that could make work. That brand was getting tired. Did it make sense? Developers found it not to be so friendly to build because of the square footage, because of some of the requirements they had. So brand leaders at Hilton says, hey, let's decide to revamp this. We got to come up with a new prototype. So I got a chance to be on that board and on that committee to help kind of shape the brand. It was really interesting. I don't think a lot of people know where where you start. You really start with a piece of paper and figure out, hey, this is all the data we have. This is what guests like about the hotel. This is what they don't like about the hotel. This is what developers like. This is what developers don't like. So how do we get to it where it becomes more developer friendly, enhance the experience that guests were already having at this hotel that's 25 years old or this brand, and make sure it's relevant today. And, it's probably about a year and a half process between meetings, visits. We had like a cardboard box to see if it was the right size room. It's interesting how the process works. It's really digging in deep to really understand what's relevant and what's not. And that was fun.
I got invited to
Yeah,
go look at it down in, I forget
that's
where,
right. Yeah.
outside of Atlanta, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
Beaufort, Georgia was the first
Yeah.
one. It's basically Homewood Suites. It's the 10.0, which is the new prototype, new generation. Today, it really did something for the brand because now became more developer friendly. The operating model was great to begin with, just got enhanced to make it more profitable. Developers love it. So now we've seen a lot in the pipeline, which probably wouldn't have happened without this work that happened and, a collaboration, I would say, with owners and Hilton to come up with this. So as you know, in our industry, we've had a lot of new launches, a lot of new brands that have come up into the space under the umbrellas of Hilton, Marriott, IHG, Hyatt, all of them. And, really the key has been really providing the right solution for a guest at the right time. Everybody has different needs. Everybody has different needs at different times that they travel. And what's the right brand for you? So, Hilton's and Marriott, all of them have decided that, hey, let's come up with something that makes sense. It also obviously helps grow the companies and, brings a lot of value to everyone. So got a chance to be part of that, which is exciting. And I think Sean, you and I, do get a chance to see some of this before anybody doesn't even know that's going to exist, right? We get a chance to make a change if we need to, if we don't feel it's right. We always think about the guests when it comes down to it, and obviously ourselves because we're not going to be doing it just to do it. We need to make sure we answer questions to our investors and deliver the right margins and profits. So.
I know I sat on one that was product integrity for one of the brands, and one of the things used to drive me nuts is, as I matured, is I can't see the shower. It says shampoo, conditioner, and lotion or conditioner, but you can't see it. And so
Yeah.
I think in a lot of the brands, like you'll see them larger, and I'll figure I'm going to take partial credit for making sure. It's just every meeting I went into, make it large enough for an older person to see it. So
That's
I
right.
think it's my
Exactly.
contribution to the hotel
Yeah.
business. So
Yeah.
Chet, let's take a step back again. Now you talked about when your family came over as immigrants and started working here. So what's the relationship? And I think it's a good story to tell about, the name Patel is commonly associated as with hotel owners. I remember when I first went to my first, I think it was a Choice convention or Best Western convention. We were in that brands for a while. I went to my first convention. There was like A through F, then there was G through O, and then there was P, and then
Mm.
there was Q through Z because there was so many people with the name Patel. What's the scoop with the name and then how that transitioned to the hotel business in the United States?
Yeah,
It's big.
you're absolutely right, Sean. I think people, as the Patels in general, as a surname, if we want to call it, saying like Smith, right, is a very common name. It's almost like a trade name in a way. Most Patels, I'd say most because not all of them, but most of them were in farming. And what happened was that Patel name kind of came out of that. Patels were mostly farmers for the kings and the kingdoms, the land that the kings owned. Patels farmed it, and that kind of that's kind of the early days of the name. As they came over here, they got into the same kind of entrepreneur business, and a lot of them came over on education, student visas to either for master's degrees or something else, and then slowly they started looking into buying businesses, and like my father and my uncle, who were probably pioneers in their time. They were pretty early on, mid 1970, to purchase a motel or a roadside inn in South Jersey. There's probably a handful of Patels at that point that had hotels across the country. So they were somewhat of a pioneer, at least a pioneer for their community in India. So as they saw this, people in India heard this, they wanted to come to the US and say, wow, this is a great opportunity. Poverty is huge in India. It's third world at the time. So it's really hard to make a dollar if there is any. So any opportunity they got, they took. So student visas were very common back then. Everybody, made sure that they went to school, got themselves a visa to come here, further, continue their education, and then maybe get into some sort of business. And the motels made it a little easier. It was a place to stay, like I said earlier. So the whole family could stay there, work there. They don't need a car even if they needed, they don't need to go to work. So it made it a lot easier. So it was really catered to what they thought would be a good opportunity as far as business goes. And they grew a little bit at a time. Each of them helped each other out. That's the key, I think, that people don't understand, is that all the family, extended family, they'll help each other, even financially, they'll help them out. And all it takes is a few $100,000 for a down payment. A lot of these mom and pop roadside inns that were ripe for retirees, U.S. retirees, they just wanted to retire. They were at a point in their careers and would pass the business on to someone else. So they would even hold the mortgage. So to come up with $100,000 or $200,000, ask a few friends and family, they help each other out, and that kind of started the next one. So little by little, as you saw, I heard maybe 40% of all hotels are owned by Indians, and maybe, I don't know, maybe 20% are Patels.
Yeah.
So it's quite an astonishing number today, about, if you want to say 50 years later.
So let's take it from that to things have changed, obviously. There's
Yeah.
multiple generations of the families and how maybe things have changed and how that has evolved into, I mean, your company's 125 hotels. You're not doing mom and pop hotels. So you're another generation doing a bigger, better kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd say somewhere along the line, obviously there's only so many independent hotels in the country, and franchising also became big in the 70s. If you think about the early days of Days Inn, Cecil B. Day, and think about Hilton and Holiday Inn, Kenneth Wilson, Ramada. These are all kind of the premier brands at that time in mid-scale and even full service, right? So they started popping up as the interstates in the US popped up in the 70s, late 60s to 70s. So as interstates came up, every exit ended up having hotels and restaurants and gas stations, in some cases, all of it in one, like a Days Inn. So, that became very common, and a lot of the independent hotels started to kind of shy away, right? Guests started traveling to newer hotels. So obviously people saw that and wanted to get into franchising. So some of even my dad's generation got into franchising early, realized, the value there. And then slowly ourselves and myself and my partner's father got into franchising, Al Patel, I'm sure you heard of him. And, we got together in 2000 and formed Baywood. several of us, and figured out this is probably the right way to go. Expanding our businesses and kind of keep them relevant with the way guests travel.
And now you have 125 hotels as a
Yeah, that's
partnership.
right.
That's pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
and I think as you've seen it in our industry, and I think every industry, is that loyalty's been a big piece of everything now, right? If you get a cup of coffee, how many people are loyal to Starbucks? How many people are loyal to Dunkin'? I think the same thing happens with us. Even computers. Look at Apple. Look at Microsoft, whatever company it may be. So there's a following, and I think that's what's really kept the industry going. That the loyalty piece, the guest loyalty, is a big piece of what drives our business. And meaning Baywood's business, we kind of follow certain brands that people love, and find markets to build them in.
So we probably got 5 or 6 minutes left, but let's take it down another different path. Let's talk about we talked about the evolution of hotels. Let's talk about the evolution of things that go into the hotels, like the technology, or well, how do we stay relevant, and how do you stay relevant yourself, but also your company and your properties? What's happened in the last 10 years, say, and then what's happening now? What's the thing going on now?
So I think what's happened with 10 years ago, if you think about internet's really changed the way we operate. I mean, as a person, every aspect of ours has changed because of the internet. The way you shop, the way you live, the way you think. I mean, everything's happened since the internet, right? And I think the way you communicate, the way you get information, and that's a grown, right, exponentially now. And with the introduction of AI, I think technology is taking on a new direction in my perspective. I think it's changing a lot more rapidly than it did before in the last, say, 10 years or 15 years. And I'm not sure what's going to happen. We're thinking about 20 years from now, who knows how we're going to, in our business, operate hotels. We may even not even have people. But I think at some level, what I see is that the expectation. So if you think about a 4, 5, or 6-star hotel, the expectation is actually human connection. Then we may actually see people, right? Physical people that are working a desk, or, cleaning a room, or helping you at the restaurant. I think some of the hotels that we see in the economy space and mid-scale space, we may not be able to afford humans anymore, or people, that it might go to technology altogether. And if that means it's, some sort of screen that pops up, almost like Jetsons, if anyone in the audience has seen the Jetsons, I think they were ahead of their time. I mean, there was little screens that would pop up with a person, on the screen, and say, "Hey, how can I help you?" And that may be the future of hotel business in the economy and mid scale space. I'm in a way kind of nervous in the sense what's going to happen. I feel like we're going to lose the touch of humans and hospitality, what it really means. But in some cases, I think maybe the next generation is ready for it. They don't mind. They don't care. So
I
we'll
think
see how that changes.
to me, the thing that can happen is that where the people can be people and not be functioning data enters or that kind of thing. This new
Right.
Marriott pane of glass, that's the new thing that's been, it's new. I mean, this Marriott's still on DOS. So I've been
Yeah.
wondering, I
Yeah.
don't even know who DOS is, what DOS is, but that new pane of glass, it's like you do 1 or 2 clicks and you're all done. And you can spend that now the time it used to take you 20 clicks to get to
Yep.
checking something in. You can do it in
Right.
1 or 2 and you can talk to the person. So it might create even more hospitality, at least in the transition. Yeah, someday it might not. You go to the airport and you really don't need to do anything other than just, show your pass. You don't need to check in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything.
Oh, I remember just a few years back, it hasn't been that long, maybe 7, 8 years back, where, kiosk at the airport was like, oh, people didn't wanna use it. They still wanted to go see somebody at the check-in desk, right?
Yeah.
But today, it's almost people, gravitate to the kiosk, or, versus going to the desk, right? They'd rather just, get their baggage tags, put them on themselves, and just drop off their bags, right? They'd rather go through that process instead of waiting in a line for somebody to help them. So I get it. I think it's just adaptation, but it'll take time. I think it'll take time, but maybe not as much anymore. As the generation changes, younger folks. For me personally, how do I stay relevant? I got my kids. They're 25 and 23. They keep me relevant. A lot of times I go, "Okay, what's the latest? What social media platform should I be on now?" Or, what I mean? I think our kids keep us relevant. They know more than we do when it comes to this technology. At least mine do. I don't know about yours, Sean.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
No.
grandkids. I don't know at this
Yeah,
point.
my grandkids could do it. 8 years old,
Yeah,
he's, like, swiping through, doing stuff.
that's right.
He said, "No, this is how you do it," and so it is great.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap it up, but, we've got an audience out there, the young younger folks than me. They
Yeah.
students, both high school, college, but there's also a lot of Marriott execs and Hilton execs that follow the same podcast. So, what would you
Mhm.
say about you got a podium now? You want to say something to the younger people coming into this industry or thinking about it. What might you say
Mhm.
to them?
So I think the struggle we've had is making our industry somewhat sexy. There's other industries out there that they seem like, wow, that's an exciting place to be, or that's an exciting company to work for. It's like, how do we get our companies, meaning our Hilton, not only our development management companies, but even our parent companies, how do we make them a little more exciting and more open and kind of interesting to newer generations that are coming in? And I think that's the scary part, is that what needs to change, right, amongst ourselves to make us more attractive to people. We may not even have to change that much. If you think about what's going on, the industries are changing, other industries are changing so fast that the personal touch is kind of missing. And I think that's one thing we still deliver pretty well. The level of communication, the level of, acknowledgement, we within our company, we're always creating and making sure we have the best place to work, and the collaboration is a big piece of that. So, having an office environment, having a hotel environment where you see people communicate every day, I think that's a key. And I think we're losing that nowadays.
Well, Chet, thank you so much for being here. And I think, we've been longtime friends but it's great to be able to share friends with the people aspiring to get into our industry. And I think I'd get into the industry if I listened to this and listened to you. So, so thank you so much for being here. And
Thank you, Sean.
let's uh, let's keep doing things for people.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Bed and Butter, the hospitality podcast produced in partnership with Southern Maine Community College. Subscribe to the podcast to ensure that you don't miss any episodes, and while you're at it, share it with someone who might benefit from these insights.